In this episode, I have a conversation with Brian Beauford about how ministry leaders can maximize their productivity. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab, the podcast that is dedicated to having conversations that empower healthy churches. My name is Kendall Connor. I'm so thankful to be with you today for another episode. It's going to be a good one. Joining me today is someone that I know is going to be able to help you, especially if you are looking to boost your productivity in ministry. I get the chance to talk with Brian Beauford, who is the founder of Productive Pastor, which is a great resource that helps thousands of ministry leaders to lead with confidence and not chaos. Brian is a mastermind when it comes to developing tools that help with ministry. And so I know we're going to get to hear about some of those. It's going to be a great one. Brian is a husband and a father of 3 kids. During his time when he was in college in Boston, he developed there a passion for church planting. And that led him to help start being part of a team that launched a church when he was just in his junior year of college. And now, 19 years later, he serves as the executive pastor of that same church. It's pretty amazing. That church has grown to include 4 locations, and he's also played a big part in planting 7 other local churches. Altogether, Brian is passionate about helping busy pastors to find the margin that they need to lead a healthy life and ministry. So without further ado, I want to jump into this conversation. Here's my talk with Brian Beauford. Well, hey, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good. Feeling good.
That's awesome. Thanks for taking the time to jump on the podcast with us. I know that you've got just read some of your public bio and shared about how you have been able to do some awesome things with Productive Pastor and really just have a heart for helping ministry leaders to be productive. Is that right?
Yes, that's my passion.
Love that. Yeah, I'm really hoping that by the end of this that I'm just going to absorb some of that productivity from you. You know, I'm going to be definitely taking notes along the way, but maybe just this conversation will help me a little bit to kick it up. What do you think?
I think so. Hopefully it's a help.
I'm all about it. No, it's awesome. I want to jump straight in. Something that we kind of ask every guest that comes on. We read your public bio, but I'd love to just hear from you. What's something that doesn't make that public bio that all of your family and your friends would know about you?
This is like a crazy story that I don't get to tell very often, but I grew up in Alaska on an Air Force base. My parents were both in the military.
No kidding.
And in 4th grade, I almost got eaten by a bear. It was charging at me as I was waiting for the bus. And there's these blue trucks that were like Animal Patrol, and they shot the bear before it got to me.
No kidding.
It's crazy.
Right out of the gate. I'm not going to lie. We just went straight into the trenches with this one. I was not expecting a bear attack to be on this. Well, I'm glad that everything is okay from right? It's been a while though, right?
So in Alaska, in elementary school, they have those like all school assemblies, and I guess down here, my kids are in school now, but they have assemblies and they talk about, what do you do if a fire drill? Our assemblies were like, if there's a moose on the playground, what do you do? Gosh. Wow. Right? If there's a bear charging you, what do you do? So we learned that there's 2 different kinds of charges. Well, first of all, there's black bears and brown bears. Black bears are essentially giant dogs, and they're scared of everything. And if they don't see really well, so if you can stand on something and make yourself look bigger, they run away. But brown bears can climb trees, they can run 30 miles an hour. And so essentially as a 4th grader, they're telling you, lock your fingers behind your neck and just don't let it flip you over. But that's about all you can do,
I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's 2 types of runs. So like if it's running every other foot, that's a bluff. But if it's running with both front feet, then that's a charge. And so I remember I saw the bear from across the way it was quite a ways away. And I'm looking for the bus. So the bear was over here, but the bus was coming from the other direction. So I looked back this way for the bus. And by the time I looked back this way, the bear had closed like half the distance between us and was running with both feet. And then I got like tunnel vision, but apparently it was a bear that they've been tracking for like 2 days, and they shot it. Yeah.
Well, Brian, right out of the gate, I mean, you've shared so much knowledge and wisdom. I feel like I'm going to walk away from this knowing a little bit more, at least on the subject of bears.
Yeah. So she went down like a cliff to go fishing, but she had put her cubs in a tree behind me. So that's what set her off. But
wow. That's a lot. Wow.
So most people don't know that about me.
That is, I didn't know the realities of Alaska. There's going to be someone listening to this that's in Alaska, and they're going to be able to testify to this. They're going to be like, yeah, that's how it is around here.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a lot. Again, I feel like I've learned so much already. This is good. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Tell us about your journey. You've spent 2 decades as an executive pastor at a church plant, right? Which, yep. I mean, I know just from my own church planting journey and being involved with the church plant for over 10 years now, that has its own unique challenge. There's a lot that comes with that. Tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of what led you to end up with the different projects that you're working on now.
Yeah. So in Alaska, I came from a really big church. It was several thousand people.
Wow.
With radio station, TV station, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I moved to Boston to literally get as far away from Alaska as I could, but still be in the U.S. Wow. At the time, my sister lived in Connecticut, and I visited her for a summer, and I was like, man, I really love New England. I love the history here. So I moved down here. I went to a really small Bible college, about 150 people. And then I actually got a speeding ticket. And so I had to get a job because I had to pay for this speeding ticket. And so I ended up working at the mall at J. Crew, and I met multiple people, Jack, Charlotte. I could go on with a list of people that became friends that were not Christians. And that was the first time in my life that I had true friends that I really cared about that didn't know God. And we ended up having a ton of great conversations, but they had literally never met another Christian before in their life. So they're, 22, 24 years old, whatever it is. And they had never met a Christian. Now, they had met people that claimed to be Christian, but then when I told them that I actually adjust my life to what the Bible teaches and I go to church every week, they had never met anyone like that.
It was serious for you. This is something you took serious. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, holy moly, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So then I went back home that summer after my freshman year, and I remember being like physically sick from the Christian subculture. And I bought a one-way ticket back. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was that Jack and Rose and Charlotte and all these people, if I didn't go back, who would? It'd been 24 years and they never met someone like me. At that time, which I think it's still true, you're more likely to run into a Christian in India than you are in Boston. All the different suburbs of Boston, it's less than 2% claim to belong to a gospel-centered church. And so I just felt a personal burden to come back. I had never thought about what church planting looked like. I didn't even know that churches got planted. I just thought they were always there or something, like some old guy knocks on doors or something. I never really thought about it. But then when I came back, I started reading books. I invited them to church, but the church that I was going to was 45 minutes away. They weren't going to drive that far. Christians will drive, a good ways for a good church. But your disconnected friends and neighbors aren't going to drive, at least around Boston. They're not going to drive more than 15 minutes for that. And so, I started reading books. There was a guy that spoke at our chapel that talked about church planting in a team model where they had built up leaders and volunteers and directors within their church, and then sent all of those people out as a church. So they had 200 people their first weekend. And that just really lit a fire in my heart for what it would look like to plant churches in New England. And so then there was a rumor that one of the professors on campus, his name is Sean Sears, was maybe going to start a church. So I just walked into his office one day and said, I'm all in. I don't care if I have to work at Home Depot. I'm all in. I have to help you start churches.
Yeah.
I have to have a church for these people from the mall to go to.
Wow.
And then 6 months later, him and I started the church in his living room. And that was in February of 2025. And so, yeah, here we are coming up on 19 years. Our first service was November of 2025. And our whole dream was like, maybe one day the church will get to 300. If it did, we'd be one of the largest churches around Boston. Yeah. Like there was maybe one or two churches that were over 500 in the area, in like all of greater Boston. And so we're like, man, maybe 300, maybe if like everything works out and we're like, God blesses, maybe 300. And so with that, I knew as the number two, which even then I didn't consider myself a number two. I just, whatever the church needed, I was going to do. So I started off in kids ministry, and then I helped with groups and then youth, and I helped out with everything. But yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to get paid. And so I started a website design business. Back then, you could download the free version of Dreamweaver or whatever and build a website.
Right. Thankful for all the Adobe products, right?
Yeah. And so that's what I did.
And I want to make sure we have this right. So that was 2005, right? That was your timeline?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. We had the first talk when I walked into his office. That was October of 2004. Yeah. And so it's been 20 years since we've had that conversation. But incredible. 19 years since the church. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were trying to fuel that church planning journey, right? You were trying to figure out, how are we going to survive while we're chasing something that we feel God's called us to do.
Yeah. We had a quote for a website for $5,000, and we were like, we don't have 2 nickels. Like, I don't know how we're going to get $5,000. And so I was like, hey, I did yearbook in high school. Maybe I can figure out this whole website thing.
Right.
And so I downloaded the free version of Adobe Flash and Dreamweaver, and I built our first website, just a landing page over the weekend. And
that's taking me back a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Flash and Dreamweaver.
Flash was all the rage.
Oh yeah, then. Yeah. I remember it well.
You go to the website and there's a song playing, and you're like, "What tab is this?
What is this?"
Yeah. And so. As Sean went around the country raising support from different churches, kind of like a missionary, he was raising $50 to $100 a month from all these different churches. And all these churches were saying, man, your website is amazing. Who did this? And for a while he was saying, this college kid that's helping me start the church.
Yeah.
And then finally I was like, no, I have a business. Here's my business card. Tell them this is who did it. And so that started
clearly on the business card, it didn't say, some college kid, right?
Right. Yep.
Probably a little bit more pro than that, right? At that point.
Yep. And so that's how, that was actually my second business that I had started. My first business was a driveway sealing business, but the second one was a website design company for churches. And then that steadily grew for the next 5 or 6 years till we had about 1,200 churches that we were helping every month, building their websites, having ready-made templates, all that kind of stuff. Either way, long story short, that's what I did for the first 10 or 11 years of the church. I was co-vocational, meaning that the church did not pay me a dime, but I gave about 30 to 40 hours a week to the church for free because my businesses could support my income, but allowed me the flexible time to do whatever needed to be done for the church. And so when the church was small, this is maybe year 3, Sean and I were both working alone in our homes. Even though there was an office at the church, we weren't using it. And so one day we were like, I just don't want to be alone. Can we just I'll put my business office in the church. You put your pastoral office in the church. We can work together. And then it allowed me to be super flexible. So I could work on church stuff when I needed to, but then go back to website stuff. And then slowly, as we were hiring more people for the website business, the church would need them. And so literally I was hiring them for maybe a year, and then I was handing them off to the church. And then, my admin person became the church's admin person. Right. It worked out really, really great. And so then maybe, 5 or 6 years after starting that business, I actually ended up selling it to ministry brands. I stayed on for a little bit, and I used that money from the sale to start other ventures.
Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, everything I've ever started was because as a bivocational or co-vocational pastor or executive pastor, I had a need, and I created something to solve that need. And I kept it to myself, and then other people were like, "Hey, we need this.
Yeah.
Like, can you help us with this?" And so that's how every one of my ventures have really started. Was I created it for a need that I had myself, and so things like mastermind groups, Ministry Library, which is like a leadership development resource, Productive Pastor, which is a physical and now a digital planning tool for busy pastors, church masterminds, Secret Worshiper, which is a tool that we use to send out unchurched people to go physically visit churches and give them a report. So all of these things I've started for myself because I needed these things, and then slowly other people found out about it, and they were like, "Can you do this for us?" And so awesome. How this whole journey kind of got started with the Productive Pastor in particular was after I sold the business, I came on full time with the church. Sean pulled me aside and said, I need you to dedicate time to the church. I don't want kind of leftover time. I want primary time. And I was like, okay, but I still had this big drive, like my personality. I don't know if you've ever taken something like Predictive Index or something, but I'm a venturer, meaning I love to start new things. I love to pioneer new things. So I still had that drive, but I also wanted to help the church grow.
That in you. Yeah.
And so my wife was the one that actually gave me this limit. She's like, "Listen, I don't want to tell you can't do the business stuff, but you can only spend 10 hours a week on the business stuff." And I was like, "Oh no, what am I going to do? Because I have all these ideas." And so I had that limitation, that guardrail of 10 hours a week. And so I learned delegation. I learned productivity tips. I'm not naturally the most organized person. And so I had to become that, or I had to figure out a system that allowed my natural self that's kind of all over the place to get a little bit more clarity and focus. And I started this essentially using a journal, a notebook to do that. And then over the years, my friends have seen my notebooks and they've inquired about it. I've gone on a couple of mastermind trips, and they keep asking me to do like a little TED talk about how I use my notebooks. And at first I said, no, like, this is stupid. I just write stuff down. It's not anything.
Like, come on, guys, this is just what I do,
Yeah. I'm like, this is dumb. It's not anything. And then after 3 or 4 different mastermind trips, where they had me present it, they really just encouraged me. They're like, "Listen, you think this is stupid, but lots of pastors would benefit from a system like this." And so I was like, I don't know. So I dragged my feet for a couple of years on it, but then I finally, 2 years ago, systematized it, put it in a book that people could buy. And now, I mean, there's, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 pastors around the country that are using it.
It's amazing.
This last month was our best month in sales ever. Like it's really taken off. I'm shocked. I'll go to conferences and people recognize me from the journal. And that's the journal. That's the planner that I'm sitting here using every day, right? Each week, right? That's the guy. It's cool to see people like me who are executive pastors or leaders in a church that maybe aren't naturally organized, that with a simple framework can really get a lot of stuff done. It's cool. And the whole idea is that you're not going to get more done, but you should get the right things done so that you can free up your time to be with people, right? Whether that's counseling or getting home early to be with your kids or your wife or something. Like, hopefully pastors and leaders that are more productive are freeing up their time to be with people. So,
no, that's so good. And man, you've said so much, and I think I love your heart that the things that you set out and you've created, because you've mentioned several things that you've gone out and you've created, they didn't come from a place where you were thinking, okay, well, this is my chance to make it big, or to, come up with some great idea that's going to give me fortune overnight, right? You have come up with these ideas, and just with the heart of, okay, I'm trying to get better myself. I'm trying to figure out something that's going to work at our church. I'm trying to figure out something that's going to help on our side. And then people have recognized that in you and said, oh yeah, actually, if you're not aware, something that just seems normal to you would help so many other people. And now you said with the productive pastor planner, you've been able to get that in the hands. I think you said 3,000 or 4,000 people. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, let me just stop right here and ask this. Why would you say that it's important for ministry leaders, whether it's pastors or admins or, any level, any kind of leaders serving in ministry? Why is it important to be productive and make the most of their time?
Yeah, I actually get quite a bit of pushback on the idea of being a productive pastor. So I run some ads on Facebook and stuff. And, sometimes you get the comments of essentially pushing back on this idea that pastors shouldn't be productive. They shouldn't try to get more done. And so my reframing of that is productivity isn't about getting more done. It's about getting the right stuff done.
Right.
I think a lot of the times busy pastors, busy leaders are busy doing a lot of things, but they may not be doing the things that actually move the needle.
Right.
They're mostly reacting to things that are happening, and they're putting out fires, where a productive pastor or a productive leader is someone who's proactive. They have an idea of where they need to go, and they're taking small steps at a regular rhythm to get there.
Yes.
So it's less about getting more done, but it's actually about getting the right things done, so that you can free up your time and hopefully get out of the office, and go meet with people, go do leadership development, go invest in a young leader, develop more life group leaders or small group leaders,
right.
Go visit someone at the hospital, go do the things that only you can do, and get out of the weeds of stuff that's in the office. So that's my hope, is that that's what they do with being productive, right? You could use that productive and say, I got all my work done that normally takes me, 5 hours. I got it done in 4. And so I'm just going to do more stuff. That's actually not what I'm talking about. Get that work done in 4 and use that extra hour to go do something with someone. So.
Right. No, I love that. I know that there's many a church leader, many a pastor that, struggles, if we're really honest, with balancing ministry and our personal lives. Yeah. Why do you think that having these tools, having systems in place and even a process is important to making sure that you're able to make those moments count, right? That you're in the right place at the right time, you're with the right people at the right time. What would you say to that, to pastors and leaders who are struggling with that right now?
Yeah, I think, that's the journey that I was on. Like I said, I'm not very organized myself. And as the church grew, we were stuck around 80 people for the first 4 years, 60 to 70, then to 80 people. We weren't growing a lot. And we thought maybe that's what we're going to be. It's going to be a church of 85. Yeah. And, Bible college taught me to be a really good doer, but not really a good leader. And so I went to Exponential Conference in Orlando. And to me, that was like the flip side of the coin from Bible college or seminary. Seminary, Bible college, whatever, they don't have classes on, okay, what do you do with leaders? How do you manage volunteers?
Sure.
What do you do on Monday morning after church? How do you debrief a horrible weekend and figure out the root cause of what happened?
Right.
And so slowly over time, reading books, talking to other people, I just gained this small set of productivity tools. And those tools help me set goals, create a very flexible structure for me, and helped me gain focus on the things that I should be doing. It helped me figure out what to say yes to and what to say no to based on goals that I had for myself and for the ministry. And so those tools help me get stuff done faster, but it allows me to go home earlier. And so now early on when I had the business and the church was growing, I was working 7 days a week. I was working for the business, and then we had services on Saturday and Sunday, and I didn't have a day off. And that was one of the reasons that Christy, my wife, said 10 hours a week is all that these businesses can take.
Sure. Yeah.
But now that I have these tools and I've set up my structure and I know my clarity, I know what to say yes to and what to say no to. I'm able to get home before 6. I take Fridays off. We have day dates, me and my wife, every Friday. I'm able to be there for my kids. I'm teaching an entrepreneurial class at the kids' school. Like, it has freed up my time to do the things that actually fill me up. And so I think that's why those tools are important, is because it's not just like I said before, it's not just about getting more done for the sake of getting more done.
Yes.
It's about getting your stuff done faster so it frees you up to do the things that only you can do. One thing that Sean, my lead pastor, always says is, we're all replaceable at work, but we're not replaceable at home. And so
true.
if we can figure out a way to get home just, 30 minutes to an hour earlier, you should do it. Like, get your stuff done. Obviously, yes, but then get home and be with your family. So hopefully that's what you're using these productivity tools for, is to actually.
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's probably many people who are listening to this today. We're staying busy, right? We're staying busy in our churches. We're staying busy getting things done. And sometimes there's that tension of, you want to spend time on the things that really, you would say, matter the most. But there's the tension of Sunday comes every single week, right? And, then as your church grows, the needs and the requirements seem to, rise with it. And so there's always that tension that's there. And so I love what you said. I honestly, I think hearing some of the benefits that you've sort of reached in your own life by putting through in a process, things like you mentioned, a day date with your wife, each week being able to spend time investing in your kids, and they're teaching a class at their school. I mean, just doing all different things like that. There are going to be people who are listening to this that are thinking, I want to get there. Right. They're not there right now. They're doing a lot, and they're tired and they're going through those things. And so I know that that's going to be, this conversation is relevant to, I would say, every ministry leader, because we all want to accomplish the things that we know that God has called us to do. We've all got a job to do, right? But there's also these other areas of our life that we don't want to neglect. And so I think that's why a conversation like this is so important. I do want to touch, you mentioned setting goals. What would you say is the importance of setting clear goals, finding kind of, clarity in your work? Can you unpack how any of these practices can kind of change your approach to ministry and your job?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that my friends really honed in on my notebook was the first 10 or so pages. They were dedicated to personal and professional clarity and goal setting. And then literally everything else the rest of the year revolved around my personal and professional clarity and the goals that I had set. I set big goals for every month throughout the year. And so I think what that does is it helps you know what to say yes and what to say no to. Right. Steve Jobs, was the famous guy who said, he said no to everything. Right. But the reason he said no to everything was so that he could say yes to the right things. And so I think when you have that clarity, that's what it allows you to do. It allows you to have a filter or a framework in your mind that says, I can say yes to this thing and I can say no to this thing based on where I want to go, where I see myself, where I need to grow on the personal clarity side, but then on the professional clarity side, where I want to take the ministry or where I think God's calling us to go next as a church or as a ministry. And so it allows you to have that framework to say, these are the 3 things that we should be working on. And these are the 2 things we should not focus on right now. They may be important, but they're not part of what's clarity. Well, what clarity we have moving forward, they're not part of that vision. And so I think that's a great tip,
right? So I want to before we move forward, you said that one of the strategies is picking a goal or maybe perhaps multiple goals for that month, and that's your focus. And then you would say, okay, maybe we have something else that's coming up. We'll just, we can work on that. We can get to that, but maybe you slate it in for a later time. Is that kind of the method that you're using there?
Right. Yeah. So what the journal will bring you through several different exercises to help you do this. But yeah, you're going to set big goals for every month. I think most people underestimate what they can do in 3 to 6 months. We overestimate what can be done in a day, right? So at the end of the day, we're like, oh man, I didn't get all this stuff done. But we underestimate what we could do over time. And so setting a big goal for the month. So this is how we break it down. You set a big goal for the month, and then you break that big goal into 4 action steps that you can do each of the 4 weeks of that month.
Wow.
And so, yes, you have this big goal of, I want to train 6 new life group leaders or something, right? That was a goal that I had a couple months ago. That's a big goal. Well, week 1 is identify the 6 people that I want to have breakfast with.
Yeah.
Okay. I could do that this week. That's not that bad. Next week is have breakfast with all of these life group leaders. That's not that bad. Then week 3 is, go over the structure of life groups. Okay. And then week 4 is, go send them the whole packet of how we train life group leaders. Okay. Well, that's actually, I got 6 new life group leaders this month. I just did one small thing a week. But when you're sitting there looking at this giant goal of, oh man, I need to double the number of life groups or whatever, it becomes daunting and you don't know where to start. But by breaking it up into those small action items, you actually can get a lot of stuff done. And then multiply that in multiple areas. You set goals like that. So you have 2 or 3 big goals for the week where you say, no matter what, these are the priorities of the week. I have to say yes to anything that gets these 3 things done. It just allows
you may not know it, Brian, but I'm telling you, this is just that. I mean, that is worth the listen today for these folks who are listening to this, because being able to set those goals and realistically break them down. I mean, I know that there are people who are listening right now who are thinking, man, I've got big goals. I've got this big thing that I want to get done, and I'm just not sure of how to do it. But man, that seems so easy when you break it down
like ninja tip for these is most people make the mistake of making a goal something like this is a specific example that one of our leaders had last year or the year before. They wanted to figure out how to recruit more volunteers. So one of the things that he had on there was he wanted to interview 5 other organizations that are volunteer heavy that aren't churches, which I'm like, that's amazing. Great job thinking outside the box. But the task is vague. Interviewing churches or interviewing other nonprofits that aren't churches. And so what you should make these goals or these tasks, they should be literal deliverables, something that you could hand someone that says, look at this, I did this thing. Yeah. And so what I did for him was I said, that's great. I actually want a 1-page summary of what you learned from the interviews. That's the goal. So the task or the goal for that one week was not just interview 5 organizations. It was hand Brian a 1-page summary of the major lessons from my phone calls. So somehow turning those action steps into actual physical deliverables makes it a lot easier. It makes it more tangible to say, I did this thing.
No, I love that. And I'm all about the ninja tips, as you said. No, that's awesome. Part of being productive and being a good church leader and ministry leader is being able to get other people involved. And I know that involves meetings. And I know this is something that you speak to and you share on your website. What would you say is a practical tip for leading productive meetings as church leaders?
I mean, this could be a whole nother topic. So meetings are my favorite. I get very passionate about meetings. I know lots of people hate meetings. That's usually because your meetings are boring. But if your meetings are fun and productive, then meetings become everyone's best part of the week. I think meetings there's this concept called leveraged leadership activities. It's from a book called High Output Management by Andy Grove. But essentially, he talks about how there's these leveraged leadership moments where just a little bit of your time, passion, knowledge, skills as a leader has an indirect impact on everyone else's week, right? And I think meetings are the one thing that us as leaders have in our Monday through Friday professional life that sets the trajectory for everyone who works for you, right? So if you have 4 or 5 people that work for you, one 90-minute meeting that's productive and that's prepared and that has a focus can literally change 100 hours. It may change the course of their month, right? So now 40 hours a week times a month times 5 people, like it has a giant impact. If you can get it right. And so some of the tips that we have for meetings are, there's actually 8 types of meetings that are talked about in the planner. But there's a weekly staff meeting that you have with your team. And then every week, it's one of the 8 types of meetings that gets plugged into that, depending on what week it is in the year. And we have a calendar that's built out for all that. But essentially, the tip would be start meeting weekly. A lot of churches, especially smaller churches, don't meet weekly. But I think that regular weekly cadence speeds up development in your team. If you're only meeting once a month, you only get 12 times to meet with them, right? But if you're meeting every week, now you have 52 chances to correct what they're doing, invest in them as leaders, help them grow, help them get more people on the team, whatever it is. So one would be to set a weekly meeting. 2 would be to have an agenda. Don't go into the meeting saying it's just our weekly meeting. We do the same thing every week. Like literally
definitely got to come prepared for that to make the most of that time.
This is what we're going to talk about. Send it out beforehand. Hey, here's the 2 or 3 questions that need to be answered, right? Depending on the meeting or whatever it is that you guys are doing. Another tip that not a lot of people know is that every meeting should have a customer, and usually the customer is not the leader of the meeting. So like
you got to break that down. What does that mean? It's got to have a customer.
So every week, so we have 4 locations. We're running about a little less than 3,000 right now. We have 4 locations. So we have location pastors and location staff. And so what we do is every Monday we have a pastor's meeting. There's the executive team, which is me, another executive pastor, and Sean, our lead pastor, and then all the location pastors. The customer of that meeting is not me. The customer of that meeting is not Sean. The customer is not Moses, the other executive pastor. The customer is the location pastor. And we are trying to, our goal in that meeting is to say, what can we do in this 90 minutes that helps, fill in the blank, Taylor be a better location pastor this week? Everything we do is going to be focused on helping them. They are the customer. Now, there's a few times a year where it is the executive team that's the customer. Like we have a budget meeting coming up. They need to present to us the budgets that they want. Okay, in that situation, that meeting, we are the customer. We are getting something from them. But the vast majority of the time, it's the other people in the meeting. The leader is serving them somehow in helping them communicate, giving vision, helping them develop as leaders, whatever it is. Every meeting has a customer. And then the last thing is you end the meeting with action steps. You literally end the meeting with a recap and then saying, okay, Brian, you have this. Moses, you have this. Taylor, you have this. Is everyone on the same page? Okay, great.
Right.
Then you as the leader, this is like another ninja trick. At the end of the meeting, you should have no action steps.
Got to give it all away.
The meeting is delegating everything, making sure that they're doing stuff. So you're not having this meeting so that you fill up your time during the week. The meeting is serving them, but also giving them things to do. So the meeting's not for you to just leave feeling, oh man, now I have these 5 things I got to do. You should be delegating almost everything that comes out of that meeting. How we do that in the notebook is we have an action step, but then you write the person's initials next to that. So you know that it's not your job. It's, BB, it's Brian Beauford's job. And you circle it and say, that's been delegated to someone.
Man, that's amazing. I feel like that is worth the listen, just hearing how to lead the productive meetings. And also just kind of hearing from you that, just kind of getting that permission to give things away. Don't feel like to be productive, everything has to be on your plate, right? It doesn't mean that everything has to be carried by you, but even just hearing the strategy there of being able to delegate those things in those meetings, I think is so good. Something that we kind of ask every person that comes on the podcast is, what would you say, hearing, coming from your angle, your perspective, what's one essential component of a healthy church?
So this is like a big soapbox of mine.
I'm ready for it. Yeah, I want to hear it.
So a leadership pipeline, which I don't mean to like unspiritualize things. I'm actually going to bring it back to the Bible pretty hardcore. But I think a leadership pipeline is something that a lot of churches are missing. That is actually what we see in the life of Jesus. We just kind of overlook it. So I think when you look at the Gospels, we can clearly connect some dots. I think we've done a disservice by calling the 12 apostles, calling them disciples. So it gets confusing when we read the Gospels and it says Jesus talked to his disciples. You have to really pick it apart, but we know that there was more than 12 disciples, because when they had to replace Judas, they had to cast lots. They had to roll dice to figure out who was going to replace them. So it was more than two. They would have flipped a coin if it was just two guys, right? And the qualifications were they had to be men that had been with us from the very beginning. So there was a bunch of them. There was multiple men who had been there from the beginning. We don't know their names at all. We know the 12. And the reason I go back to that is because I think actually the majority of what we see in the New Testament, in the Gospels with Jesus, is actually leadership development, not discipleship. Most of his time was spent with the 12 leaders that he had, and then he had 3 really close leaders that he was pouring into. Now, Then those 12 served the greater group, right? Whether it was 120 or even more than that. There was a leadership structure, and we don't know about the 72. We don't know about the 120. We just get this focus on the 12. And so I think you can clearly see that there is a leadership structure there, much so that they had to replace Judas. So somehow they did not function well at 11. They needed 12 in order to function correctly. Wow. So there's this idea that Jesus did have a leadership pipeline. He had a leadership structure. Call it whatever you want, a pathway, a structure, whatever. But most churches don't have that. They don't have a systematic way of knowing who should be called up to the next level of leadership, or what that would even look like, or how to train them, or how to spend time with them. So once you have this idea of some kind of way to develop leaders, I think that's what leads to a healthy church. Because I believe, just like I'm a dad, if my daughter misuses her phone, I take away her phone. Right? I'm not going to give her more access to the thing that she's mismanaging. And I think the same thing is true with churches. If your church is not structured to handle people, to handle more people, why would God bless you with the ability to reach more people to mismanage? Right? So I think every church naturally grows to the limit of their systems and structures. Most of that has to do with leadership development, because to put it in business terms, the church is in the people business. And if we don't have the right structures to handle more people, to care for more people, God's not going to give us more people to care for if we're not caring for the people we have correctly. Wow. Right. It goes back to the idea of the nets. When Jesus said to throw the nets on the other side, God's blessing was he was going to fill the nets. Well, what if their nets were 3 times bigger? The blessing was that the nets were going to be full. It didn't matter how big the nets were. The nets were going to be full. Right. Same thing with the widow and the jars of oil. Right. The blessing was, I'll fill all the jars you bring to me. The blessing stopped when she stopped working. When she stopped asking her neighbors for more jars, it was done. Right. So I think the same thing is true with our churches. God will bless us to the ability that we're able to handle people, and up until that point. But we need to change our systems and structures in order to handle and care for more people. When that happens, God will backfill whatever that.
I love that. That's an incredible way of putting it, and it's so true. I feel like I've seen that play out in my, in my own church and seeing how ministry has gone. And yeah, you have to be able to prepare and be able to handle the thing that you're praying for, right? You got to prepare and kind of to be expectant for what's next and what, you're asking God to bring more people. But yeah, are you stewarding what I've already given you, right?
Which it makes sense. We talk about this in our churches all the time, right? We just do it in the aspect of money. Okay, if you're not handling your money well, why would you expect God to bless you with more money to mismanage?
Right.
Okay, well, just switch out money with people.
Yeah.
If you're not handling the people that God's already trusted with you, why is he going to give you more people to mismanage? It just doesn't make any sense.
No, that makes so much sense. Yeah, for sure. Oh, Brian, this has been really good today. Thank you for all of this. Something that we like to do with everyone when they come on is kind of a last final five, kind of a rapid fire round of questions. Would you be up for that?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to be coming to you quick with these. What is one book, and I know this will be tough. I'm looking at your background with all the books behind you. What's one book that you would recommend for church leaders to check out?
Oh, goodness. One that's really changed how I work is called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And it's this ability, it talks about this ability to focus on what's important and solve some really big issues. But it's like a muscle in the fact that most people can only do it for about an hour. But there's some techniques that he shares where you're able to grow that muscle and get it to the point where you can do that for about 4.5 hours.
Wow.
And so I do that twice a year. I get a train ticket from Boston to New York City. It takes about 4.5 hours. And so I can do deep work there on the personal side. And then I have some friends in New York that I have lunch with or so. And then on the 4.5 hour ride back, I do deep work on the professional side.
It's amazing.
And that's really changed. That's helped me set my goals. But it takes time to be able to kind of flex that muscle to where you can have all of these balls spinning and then look at a bigger picture of this issue or this problem that you're trying to solve. But it's fun. And so I've actually put that into the budget of the people that report to me on staff for the church. It's a line item called Deep Work, where they have money to get away and spend the day thinking and dreaming about them personally and professionally. So,
no, I love that. No, that's definitely a book that I'll have to check out. Next question is, what is the last thing that you listen to on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you listen to your music?
Two things. I've been geeking out on the Working Genius podcast. So I listened to a couple episodes yesterday. Music wise, I'm listening to a band called The Strike.
Awesome.
That's what's in my Spotify.
Two good ones to check out for sure. What would you say is your favorite piece of technology or software right now?
I'm going down a rabbit hole with custom GPTs. Inside ChatGPT, for everything from content marketing to life group questions to voice and tone of the church, content marketing for the church that's tied to sermon series that we're doing that would lead to Facebook groups and communities, going back to outreaches, both digital and physical, and then ads. So it's like creating this funnel.
Incredible. Amazing what you're able to accomplish with these tools that, are just now starting to become available. It's awesome. What would you say is a quote or maybe a piece of advice that has kind of stuck with you over the years?
So going back to that first year at Exponential, there was a guy by the name of Bill Esom. I think he's still around, but this was 12 or 13 years ago, maybe. But in one of his sessions, he was talking about leadership development. And I remember it just was a total paradigm shift. In Bible college, right, you're taught to be a really good doer. You come into work, you punch your time card in and out, and you do your work and you go home. But he was talking about how he would pay someone double what he would pay anyone else if they brought him 5 new leaders a year.
Wow.
If one employee brought him 5 new leaders a year, he could work from Florida. He could be out of state. He could be at the beach every day. It literally did not matter. I don't care what you do. You don't have to come to a meeting. You never have to set foot in our church if you bring me 5 new leaders a year. And I was like, wait a second, what? So that totally just was a paradigm shift for me on a lot of different things, but leadership development, but also our church staff is like this now, where we give out responsibilities, not time. And so I don't care how long it takes you. I'm paying you to do these responsibilities. If you can do these responsibilities, I don't care if you work from home. I don't care if you work from the beach or you take tomorrow off. Like it doesn't really matter. We have a set of responsibilities. And then even for us, all of our responsibilities are revolving around leadership development. So what we've said is we don't hire doers, we hire leaders of people. And so that statement has changed our hiring. It's changed so many things about how we do stuff.
It's a difference maker. No, that's so good. What is one thing that you'd like to communicate today to our audience of church leaders? Man,
I mean, if you're feeling busy and overwhelmed, I was literally where you're at, on the edge of burnout. And so I would just encourage you to start with something small. A productive week starts on Sunday night. So just plan out your week. Have 2 or 3 things that, hey, no matter what, these are the 2 or 3 things that have to get done. If I get these 2 or 3 things done, then the week was a success. Just starting small like that, I think can have a huge impact. And it's more about habits than it is about big shifts, right? So they always say, if you want to lose weight, don't make the goal, I want to lose 100 pounds, make the goal, I'm going to stop eating sugar and I'm going to go to the gym twice a week. If you do those things over time, you'll lose weight and it'll be a lifestyle shift. Yeah. So the same thing is true with productivity. Start using a few small tools, and just over time, you will end up being more productive. You'll end up naturally focusing on the right things at the right times, using your time, energy, and attention management. All that stuff will come into focus, and you'll have clarity, and you'll be able to get a bunch of stuff done more than you thought.
No, that's so good. Tell us a little bit about where we can follow you. Where can we find your planner? Where's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the planner is at productivepastor.com. And you can follow me on Instagram, bbuford, or brianbeauford.com is just a landing page with a couple of the stuff that I'm doing. So.
No, that's great. Well, Brian, thank you so much for this. I mean, you've shared so many good things with us today. And I also just want to take a moment to thank all of our listeners, really just for everyone who's following along with us today and hearing this conversation. Thank you for being a part of it with us. And I would just say, if it's been valuable to you, something that we would ask is that you would share it. Share this with somebody in your church, share it with someone that you know, a friend in ministry, and really just help us to get the word out about this, because we have a heart to really just give these practical tips and conversations and help churches everywhere, all over the world, to be healthier than ever. And so if you can leave a comment, if you can leave a review, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. All of those things would be just really help us to get the word out even further to more church leaders. And so if you can help us with that, we would so appreciate it. And thank you for being here again today. Brian, thank you for being on this conversation with us. And thank you to all of our listeners. We will see all of you next time right here on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.